Hey guys, tonight we begin with one of ancient Rome's more unusual professions, the orgy planner. Yes, someone had to schedule the wine, supervise the grapes, organize the entertainment, and make sure no one accidentally brought their mother-in-law. It might sound absurd, even decadent, but Roman feasting culture wasn't just about indulgence, it was about power, status, networking, and, well, quite a bit of chaos. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like this story if it resonates with you, and let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first light of dawn creeps over the 7 hills of Rome, casting a golden glow across the marble columns of the Forum and the sprawling rooftops of the Subura. It's 50 CE, and you wake in your modest villa on the Aventine Hill, a small but respectable dwelling overlooking the Tiber's lazy curve. The air is cool and thick with the scent of olive oil lamps that burned late into the night, their wicks now blackened stubs in clay holders. You're the city's most sought-after orgy planner, a maestro of decadence tasked with orchestrating tonight's elite feast at Senator Lucius Piso's sprawling estate on the Palatine Hill, a grand affair that could make or break your reputation among Rome's elite. Your sleeping mat, a simple straw pallet covered with a worn linen sheet, is still warm beneath you, the straw rustling softly as you shift. Your tunic, a faded blue garment you've worn for 3 days straight, lies crumpled in a heap on the terracotta floor, its hem stained with ink from late-night planning. Anxiety grips you like a centurion's iron fist, not because you're unprepared, but because your mind has already conjured 1,000 disasters before you've even touched your morning barley porridge, which sits cold in a clay bowl on a wooden table by your bed. As you sit up, rubbing sleep from your eyes with calloused hands, a faint glow catches your attention. A magical scroll has been slipped under your door, shimmering with an eerie light. It's a Roman RSVP app, an enchanted invention dropped into your life by some mischievous god, Mercury perhaps with his love of commerce and chaos, promising to streamline your guest list, but threatening to unleash a storm of complications instead. You stumble to the door, your bare feet cold against the tiled floor, the cool morning air brushing your skin as you bend to pick up the scroll with the grim resolve of a soldier reading his draft notice. The scroll is heavier than it looks, its papyrus surface etched with glowing Latin script that shifts and dances like fireflies in the dim light of your room. Unrolling it, the app buzzes to life with a faint hum, displaying the guest list in real time. Lucius Piso, yes. Aurelia, uninvited. Yes. Senator Petronius Arbiter, maybe. Junius Blaccus. Yes, with 2 unnamed guests. Flavia Maxima. Yes, requests no dormice. Governor Crispus. Yes, with 3 extra wives. Your stomach churns like the Tiber during a storm, the bitter taste of dread rising in your throat. Aurelia, Piso's tempestuous wife, wasn't invited, and her presence guarantees drama. She once hurled a jug of garum at a harpist for playing off-key during a solo she didn't even request, and the poor musician fled the feast in tears. Petronius's maybe is a nightmare. The man's sharp tongue could turn a feast into a battlefield of insults, and you can't plan seating without knowing if he'll show. Junius's unnamed guests are equally troubling respected clients, gladiators, or, gods forbid, a giraffe in a toga. Flavia's dormice request means reworking the menu at the last minute, and Crispus's extra wives complicate the seating chart further, as each will demand a prime spot to flaunt their status. You mutter, "This cursed app will be the death of me," and grab your quill, its feather frayed from overuse, scribbling notes on a wax tablet. Separate couches for Piso and Aurelia, extra wine for Petronius, flexible seating for Junius's mystery guests, a dormice-free platter for Flavia, and a contingency plan for Crispus's wives to avoid a jealous spat. Outside, Rome is stirring awake, the city's heartbeat growing louder with each passing moment. The distant hum of merchants setting up stalls in the Forum drifts through your window, mingled with the clatter of cartwheels on cobblestones, the shouts of fishmongers hawking their wares, and the bleating of goats being herded to market. A faint whiff of baking bread from a nearby oven wafts in, teasing your empty stomach, but there's no time to eat. You pull on your sandals, the leather creaking with age and stained with the dust of 100 errands, and step into the chaos of the day, your mind already juggling flaming amphorae. Your first stop is the Subura market, a labyrinth of noise and colour where the scent of fresh bread battles with the stench of fish stalls, unwashed bodies, and the occasional pile of donkey dung left in the street. The app glows again, its light pulsing as it suggests trending foods for the feast: oysters, honeyed dormice, roasted peacock, figs, dates from Judea, cheese wrapped in vine leaves, and a dessert of candied nuts and almond cakes. You weave through the crowd, dodging a drunk poet reciting an ode to his lost sandal, his voice slurring as he stumbles into a fruit stall, toppling a basket of apples. The vendor yells, shaking a fist, but the poet merely laughs, staggering off with an apple in hand. You shake your head and approach the seafood vendor, a wiry man with a grin too wide for comfort, his stall piled high with baskets of glistening oysters. Oysters, fresh from Baiae, you demand, and he hands over a basket, smirking, fresh-ish. You grimace, imagining the fallout if a senator gets a bad one. Rumours of poisoning would spread faster than wildfire in the Forum, and your name would be whispered in every bathhouse as the planner who tried to kill half the Senate. They'd ruin me, you mutter, inspecting the oysters closely, their shells slick with seawater, but suspiciously silent, no sign of life. You move on to secure the dormice, plump little creatures rolled in honey and poppy seeds, though you set aside a few for Flavia's alternative platter, muttering a prayer to Ceres that she doesn't notice the substitution. You also grab crates of figs and dates, their sweetness a promise of decadence, and a wheel of cheese wrapped in vine leaves, its tangy aroma making your stomach growl. A street dog sniffs too close to your basket, its ribs visible beneath matted fur, and you shoo it away with a sandal, grumbling, "Not today, you flea-bitten thief." The dog whines but scampers off, leaving you to haul your purchases back to the villa, your arms aching under the weight. Piso's estate is a sprawling marvel of Roman architecture, its marble columns carved with ivy motifs, and its central atrium dominated by a fountain where water burbles softly, catching the sunlight in a shimmer of rainbows. The villa's walls are painted with frescoes of nymphs and satyrs, their colours vibrant despite the years, and the air carries the faint scent of myrrh from last week's gathering. Slaves scurry about, their tunics damp with sweat as they polish the mosaic floors, a depiction of Bacchus riding a panther, its tiles gleaming like the Tiber under a full moon. You inspect the triclinium, the grand dining hall where tonight's debauchery will unfold, its high ceiling supported by cedar beams and its walls draped with crimson silk curtains that ripple in the breeze. The silk cushions on the couches are fluffed to perfection, sturdy enough to withstand the weight of a toga-clad magistrate and whatever activities they might engage in. You run a hand over one, imagining the inevitable wine stains, and adjust its position slightly to ensure it looks effortlessly luxurious. Moving on to the latrines, you ensure they're scented with myrrh, a soft, luxurious haze that whispers opulence even in the most undignified moments. A slave has placed a small clay lamp in each, its flame flickering gently to mask any odours, and you nod in approval, though you remind him to refresh the vinegar for the sponges on sticks. The wine amphorae are next, 3 of Falernian for the elite, aged and expensive enough to make Piso wince when he sees the bill. 2 of curcumin for show, their labels prominently displayed to impress, and a jar of vinegar for anyone who dares arrive after the 3rd course, a subtle punishment for tardiness. A young slave, no older than 12, with a mop of curly hair and a nervous smile, accidentally drops a fig while arranging a fruit pyramid on a silver platter. You sigh, pick it up, and whisper, 5-second rule, doesn't exist in Rome, before placing it back with a wry smile, brushing the dust off your hands. The boy blushes, muttering an apology, and you pat his shoulder, remembering your own early days as a nervous apprentice to a banquet planner in Ostia. The app buzzes again, now displaying messages from guests. Petronius requests a seat far from Junius. His poetry is a crime against the muses. You roll your eyes, adjusting the seating plan on your wax tablet, its surface scratched and worn from countless revisions. Piso gets the centre couch, the place of honour, but Aurelia must be on the opposite side of the room, preferably near a dull equestrian who won't tempt her wrath a wealthy but boring man named Titus, who collects rare snails and talks of nothing else. Junius and his mystery guests are relegated to the West End flexible seating for whatever chaos they bring, with extra cushions in case one of them turns out to be a giraffe after all. You assign a courtesan to keep Petronius occupied, hoping her charms will dull his sharp tongue, and place Flavia near the entrance, where she can avoid the dormice trays and make a quick exit if needed. Crispus's 3 wives are a puzzle. You place them on separate couches, each with a clear view of the dancers to keep them distracted, but far enough apart to avoid a jealous spat over who gets the best view of the entertainment. The seating chart isn't just a plan, it's a diplomatic strategy, a delicate balance of power, lust and vendettas, all reclining together on silk-covered couches, drinking from the same communal bowl of wine. You also leave a few empty cushions, plausible deniability for last-minute arrivals, or a place for a poet to sulk if his verses are ignored. You step back, admiring your work like a sculptor regarding his marble, knowing full well someone will hit it with a hammer before the night is over. By mid-morning, you gather the staff in the atrium, a motley crew of 30 soul slaves, performers, and runners, all looking as stressed as you feel. Their faces are a mix of exhaustion and resignation, each knowing the chaos that awaits, their tunics patched and faded from years of service. There are cupbearers to assign their zones: central triclinium, periphery lounge, west garden, and you remind them to dilute the strong wine unless instructed otherwise. Some guests think they can handle full Falernian, you warn, recalling last month's senator who sang off key after his 3rd goblet and tried to serenade a statue of Minerva, much to his wife's horror. They cannot. The fan-bearers are next, their timing crucial to keep guests cool without blowing out candles or exposing someone's secrets mid-flirtation 1 gust too strong, and a toga might reveal more than intended. Fruit attendants, a role you invented after a guest complained of unpicked grapes 2 summers ago, are instructed to refresh trays constantly, peel grapes only upon request, and remove any fruit that dares to shrivel into a raisin. The musicians, a troupe of 4 flute girls, 2 lyre players, a backup aelos duo, and a man who balances figs on his feet while walking on his hands, are already bickering over tempo. You separate the lead flute girl from the lyre player, recalling last month's duet that had guests offering marriage counselling mid-feast, their argument over a single note turning into a shouting match that drowned out the poetry readings. The dancers, oiled and dramatic, lean against a pillar, their coal-lined eyes watching you as you run through their cues. No improvisation. We're not reliving the Bacchic fire incident. That disaster, 3 summers ago, involved a dancer twirling too close to a torch, setting a curtain ablaze and forcing guests to flee into the garden half-dressed. You lock eyes with the youngest slave, a boy tasked with collecting discarded sandals, his small frame trembling with nerves. You share a silent nod, a pact that he won't fail you, and he clutches his basket tighter, his knuckles white with determination. The provisioning list is a nightmare of its own, a military requisition disguised as a menu. It's cost enough to buy a modest villa in Ostia. Beyond the oysters and dormice, you've ordered a roasted peacock, its feathers reattached for dramatic flair, though it tastes like shoe leather. A dish more for bragging than eating, as guests will boast for weeks about having chewed something that once strutted like a diver. There's a pig stuffed with live doves, a spectacle where the birds fly out when it's sliced open, always a crowd pleaser despite the mild trauma for the doves, who flutter about in a panic until they find a perch on the rafters. Dates from Judea, figs from Carthage, and cheese wrapped in vine leaves round out the savoury offerings, alongside candied nuts, almond cakes, and a dessert spectacle. A cake shaped like the Colosseum, filled with live songbirds. You haven't figured out the baking logistics yet. Last time, the birds escaped mid-prep, and a slave spent hours coaxing them out of the atrium's rafters with bits of bread, while another chased a particularly stubborn sparrow through the kitchen, knocking over a vat of garum in the process. The wine list is equally extravagant: 3 amphorae of Falernian, 2 of Caecuban for show, 1 of Massic for variety, and that vinegar jar for the tardy. You scribble a reminder: no garum accidents near the bread. Last month's anchovy-scented rolls nearly sparked a riot, with 2 magistrates refusing to speak for weeks after accusing each other of sabotage. One even claimed it was a plot to ruin his chances at the next election. The kitchen is a battlefield by noon, the air thick with the scent of roasting meat, honey, and utter panic. The head cook, a former naval officer turned domestic tyrant with a scar across his cheek from a pirate skirmish, barks orders at a trembling assistant over the proper stuffing ratio for the dormice. More honey, less poppy seeds, or I'll throw you into the Tiber myself, he roars, waving a ladle like a gladius, his face red with exertion. The peacock is prepared, its feathers reattached with meticulous care, its glassy eyes staring at you as if judging your efforts, while the cook mutters about how it'll impress the fools, even if it tastes like a sandal. The pig is stuffed, the doves inside cooing nervously, and you hope they don't escape before the reveal. Last time, one flew into a senator's toga, causing a scream that halted the feast for a full 10 minutes. Platters of figs, dates, and honey cakes line the counters, their colours a vibrant contrast to the chaos around them. A pastry shaped like the Colosseum is being glazed, its surface dusted with powdered almonds, though a slave accidentally eats a corner, earning a swift reassignment to grape-peeling duty. The cook catches him, shouting, "That's for the guests, not your greedy mouth," and the boy scurries off, his cheeks stuffed with pastry. In one corner, a vat of garum, the infamous Roman fish sauce made from fermented anchovies, simmers, its pungent aroma making your eyes water and your stomach turn. You shout, "Keep it away from the bread," recalling last month's disaster, and the cook nods. Though you don't trust his smirk, he's been known to accidentally splash garum on dishes he doesn't like, claiming it's a regional variation. The afternoon brings a new crisis. The musicians are late, and panic begins to set in like a slow tide. You'd booked a troupe of 4 flute girls, 2 lyre players, a backup aulos duo, and a man who balances figs on his feet while walking on his hands, but none have arrived, and the sun is already high in the sky. You send your fastest runner, a lanky boy named Gaius with legs like a gazelle, to the Subura, instructing him to find them alive, conscious, and dressed. You don't ask why they're late, likely drunk, asleep, or tangled in a romantic mess from last night's Saturnalia rehearsal, a festival that always leaves the city in disarray. The dancers, now pacing the atrium, complain they can't rehearse without music, their anklets jingling with every dramatic step, their voices rising in a chorus of frustration. A minor poet, a wiry man with a laurel wreath askew on his balding head, seizes the chance to recite an ode to his mother's third marriage, his voice droning like a mosquito as he gestures dramatically with a goblet of watered wine. You shut that down quickly. No one wants to hear it while eating dormice, and the thought of poetry over squeaking rodents makes your stomach turn. As a contingency, you note the cook knows 2 songs on a cracked reed pipe, and a slave has a decent voice if kept sober. You pray it doesn't come to that, imagining yourself humming a tune while a slave shakes a jar of lentils as percussion, the guests staring in horror at the makeshift performance. Just as you're about to resort to that humiliation, the musicians stumble in, dishevelled and smelling of spikenard, their tunics stained with wine and their eyes bleary. The lead flute girl's missing a sandal, her hair a tangled mess of curls, and the lyre player tunes his instrument too lovingly, his eyes dreamy as he hums a love ballad under his breath. You station him near the door for easy removal if he starts an impromptu serenade, muttering, "No one needs your heartbreak tonight." The fig balancer, a wiry man with a crooked grin, demonstrates his skill, wobbling slightly but managing to keep 3 figs aloft until one falls and rolls under a couch, prompting a slave to crawl after it, muttering curses. The scent of the feast must be as opulent as the food, a statement of wealth and temptation that lingers in the air like a whispered promise. You descend to the storage chamber, a cool, dimly lit room beneath the villa, where alabaster jars of myrrh, rose oil, saffron water, cinnamon oil, and an experimental blend called Essence of Nile Lotus line the shelves like sacred relics. The lotus blend smells like an expensive pond, and you decide against it, fearing it might remind guests of the Tiber's less savoury days. The atrium will smell of citrus and cedarwood, a clean, sharp opening note to welcome guests as they arrive, their senses awakened by the crisp scent. The triclinium gets heavier scents, myrrh, frankincense, a touch of musk, whispering, "You might make a mistake tonight, and that's okay." The garden alcoves, where secrets and togas will be misplaced under the moonlight, are scented with rose and cinnamon, just enough to make someone faint if they linger too long in the perfumed haze. You assign an attendant to warm the perfumed oils for guests' hands and feet. Cold oil is for barbarians, warm oil for seduction and good lighting. The latrines get a discreet scent, ensuring even the most undignified moments feel luxurious, with a faint hint of saffron to mask the inevitable. You warn the staff, don't overdo it. We want luxury, not a senator blaming the smell for his nosebleed. One of the dancers, a tall woman with braided hair and a mischievous smile, requests a personal scent, something hypnotic to entrance the guests. You hand her a blend so potent it once caused a minor riot during a Saturnalia feast, warning, "Use it sparingly." She smiles, her eyes glinting with mischief, and you know she won't listen. She'll douse herself in it and leave a trail of fainting senators in her wake. As evening approaches, you conduct a final walk-through, your tunic now clinging to your sweat-soaked skin, the fabric damp and heavy from a day of running between tasks. Oil lamps flicker across polished marble, casting a golden glow that says, "You're not poor tonight," their light dancing on the frescoes of nymphs and satyrs that adorn the walls. A flower boy sprinkles petals at the entrance white roses, not yellow, after last time's debacle when Piso's wife complained about the colour, claiming it clashed with her stola. You remind the boy not to overdo it last month. A guest slipped on lavender and slid into the atrium, threatening to sue for damages, though he settled for an extra amphora of wine. The bronze fountains run smoothly, their water catching the lamplight in a shimmer of rainbows, small fish darting beneath the surface, a new addition, since a general's wife nearly drowned in the koi pond last year after too much Falernian. Grapes are pyramided in impractical displays, their purple skins glistening like jewels. though you notice one pyramid leans precariously and adjust it before it topples. Pillows are fluffed with unnatural symmetry, though you adjust one slightly to make the decadence look effortless, as if the villa simply exists in a state of perpetual luxury. In the triclinium, tables are low, recliners angled perfectly, each cushion perfumed with rose oil and rotated to hide last month's wine stains from a senator's birthday disaster. Stains you couldn't fully scrub out, despite hours of effort with vinegar and a coarse brush. Silver goblets, bronze platters, and blown glass amphorae gleam, while the cheese sweats slightly, adding authenticity to the rustic charm. You quietly remove a beetle from a fig, pretending it never happened, and check the bread for garum contamination clean. For now, though you eye the kitchen suspiciously. In the garden, the lighting is soft, dim enough to be flattering, bright enough to avoid accidents involving potted plants and dignity. A servant fans incense, the effect ethereal, the smoke curling upward like a prayer to Venus. For a moment you let yourself believe it's all under control, standing in the garden as the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The illusion shatters when the first guest arrives with a dramatic thump, followed by laughter that echoes through the atrium like a trumpet blast. Lucius Piso strolls in, smelling of ambition and cologne that costs more than a soldier's annual wage, his toga pristine and his hair oiled to perfection. "Tonight, my friend, we make Bacchus blush," he declares with a wink, trailed by a gaggle of courtesans in shimmering stolas, a minor poet clutching a scroll of verses, and a man with a lyre who may or may not be invited. You decide not to check the app, which buzzes incessantly with updates. Rate your orgy prep. Guests pour in flowing robes, gold-threaded tunics, embroidered sandals, and expressions of affected boredom. They've arrived early to seem important, already tipsy to seem relaxed, their voices a cacophony of laughter and boasts. A slave offers perfumed towels. One guest, a portly merchant with a gold ring on every finger, demands spiced wine, calling it intellectual. You don't correct him, nodding to a cupbearer to fetch it, though you know he just wants to impress the courtesan on his arm. The garden fills with murmurs, introductions, and hushed judgments louder than actual conversation, the air thick with the scent of myrrh and ambition. You separate two senators who haven't spoken since the goat insult incident, a scandal involving a misinterpreted compliment about livestock that ended with one calling the other a bleating fool in the Senate House. You notice Piso reclining too close to a courtesan, his hand brushing her arm, while Aurelia glares from across the room, her fingers already twitching toward a garum jug on the table beside her. You signal a slave to move the jug out of reach, hoping to avoid a repeat of last time's disaster. The entertainment begins with a hush that ripples through the triclinium, the guests' chatter fading as all eyes turn to the centre of the room. A dancer steps forward, golden veils flowing like liquid sunlight, anklets chiming with each graceful step, her gaze somewhere between divine inspiration and complete apathy. The flute joins in, notes spiralling through the perfumed air like a gentle breeze, their melody weaving through the murmurs of the crowd. For a moment, the feast slips into rhythm-chewing slows, conversations quiet, even the poet pauses his muttering, his scroll forgotten in his lap. But then a guest, flushed with wine and bravado, demands a reenactment of Leda and the Swan, shouting, "Bring the swan," as if you keep one on hand. Another suggests Orpheus with real torches, ignoring the fire hazard, and a third proposes Gladiator juggling with water jugs, his voice slurring as he waves his goblet for emphasis. You smile, assuring them it's all planned, though your heart races as you signal the dancers to continue. The mime twins told to wait until the third course enter early, miming a seduction scene with a fig and a sausage, their exaggerated gestures drawing gasps and laughter. Half the room laughs, the other half looks confused, and one man, a retired general with a scarred face, applauds as if he's at the theatre of Pompey, shouting, "Magnificent!" Someone throws a peach, another retaliates with a fig, and you declare it a symbolic offering to Bacchus, earning cheers from the crowd who raise their goblets in a toast. You make a note. No more throwable fruit, ever, and signal a slave to clear the fruit trays before the guests turn the triclinium into a battlefield. By the third course, the wine flows like the Tiber in a flood. Amphorae opened like promises, their contents disappearing faster than you can track. Guests draped across couches like tipsy gods, laugh too loudly, flirt too boldly, and forget who they came with, their voices a chaotic symphony of revelry. You've instructed servers to dilute the Falernian one amphora can make a senator sing or confess to tax fraud, and you've seen both happen at past feasts. Conversations turn personal. A patrician compares his wealth to Jupiter's, gesturing wildly with a goblet that sloshes wine onto his neighbour. A merchant brags about his camel, claiming it's faster than any horse in the legions. A woman in pearls whispers a joke about the emperor's feet, her voice low but her laughter sharp. You pretend not to hear she's great with seating arrangements, and you'd miss her if she's exiled for treason. A poet tries to seduce a philosopher with a verse. Your eyes are like olives, dark and briny, his voice trembling with emotion. You don't intervene, but you wince, wondering how olives could ever be romantic. In the garden, a guest gives a speech about cleaning marble fountains, believing it's profound, his words slurring as he gestures at the fountain with a goblet. No one stops him. It's tradition, and the other guests nod solemnly, too drunk to notice he's repeating himself. Two courtesans engage in a passive-aggressive compliment battle, each smile a dagger, each laugh laced with venom. Your stola is so bold, one says, her eyes narrowing. And your hair so natural, the other replies, her smile tight. One gifts the other a fig, and you note to remove all figs by dessert to avoid bloodshed, imagining the fruit being used as a weapon in their silent war. The orgy heats up, scandals simmering like the garum in the kitchen, the air now thick with the scent of wine, sweat, and myrrh. Guests stop using names, calling each other Apollo, Venus, or that guy with the peacock, their identities blurring in the haze of revelry. Someone fashions a laurel wreath from table herbs, wearing it crookedly as he declares himself king of the feast, his toga slipping off one shoulder as he stands on a couch, goblet raised. 3 people splash in the fountain, one trying to baptize the others with rose water, claiming it's a new ritual to honor Neptune, though he's clearly forgotten which god he's honoring. You redirect a gladiator reenactment away from the Neptune mosaic with a tray of dates, the tattooed men falling for the distraction like toddlers, their mock battle forgotten as they stuff their faces. Under a table, 2 guests argue about stoicism while rubbing each other's feet, their voices slurred with wine, their argument devolving into a debate over whether Zeno would approve of foot massages. You cough discreetly, they nod, pretending to look for a lost bracelet, though neither wears jewellery. A flute girl bursts into tears after a guest questions her tuning, taking it as a metaphor for her life choices, her sobs echoing through the garden. You send a lyre player with pomegranate seeds to console her, hoping the seeds distract her from her existential crisis, though the lyre player starts humming his love ballad again, making her cry harder. A large man attempts to seduce a marble bust of Venus, feeding it olives and reciting poetry about her marble heart, his voice thick with emotion as he strokes the statue's cheek. You let him, it's better than his earlier rant about grain tariffs, which nearly started a brawl when he accused a merchant of price fixing. The party spirals further into chaos, a whirlwind of silk, wine, and questionable decisions. A guest knocks over a torch and you catch it before it hits the tapestry. Your heart pounding, but your face calm. Years of practice keeping your composure intact. A young patrician, drunk on Falernian, starts a drinking game involving gladiator trivia. Name 3 famous duels or drink. A minor senator fails, is booed by the crowd, drinks and collapses into a pillow, quoting Virgil in his sleep, his snores mingling with the flute music. In the west alcove, a woman in a golden stola proposes to a statue of Apollo, claiming it spoke to her through the wine, her voice trembling with devotion as she places a ring on its marble finger. You don't correct her. She's a generous tipper, and you'll need her coin for next month's feast. A flame dancer performs too close to the pool, singeing a guest's toga, and you douse the flames with a goblet of diluted wine, earning a cheer from the crowd, who raise their goblets in a toast to your quick thinking. A guest in the garden starts a philosophical debate about the nature of pleasure, but his argument is interrupted when he accidentally sits on a platter of dormice, squeaking in protest as he leaps up, scattering the rodents across the lawn. You signal a slave to collect them, muttering, "Flavia will be pleased she missed that." The app buzzes again. Rate your orgy. You shove it into a basket, muttering, "Not now," as you adjust a lamp, nod to a server, and glide through the shadows, the still centre in a storm of silk, grapes, and moral compromise. As the night wears on, the chaos reaches its peak, a crescendo of decadence that would make even Bacchus blush. A group of guests in the atrium decides to reenact the founding of Rome, using a table as a makeshift Palatine hill and a goblet as the sacred plough. The Romulus of the group, a drunken equestrian, accidentally knocks over the table, sending platters of figs and cheese crashing to the floor, while his Remus laughs hysterically, clutching a candied almond as if it's the city's first brick. In the triclinium, a senator's wife, emboldened by wine, decides to lead an impromptu dance, climbing onto a couch and twirling with a veil she's stolen from a dancer, her movements more enthusiastic than graceful. She trips, landing in the lap of a startled philosopher who spills his wine and declares, "This is the true meaning of chaos." The crowd cheers, mistaking his words for a toast, and more wine is poured. A poet in the corner, ignored by all, begins reciting his verses to a potted plant, claiming it's the only one who understands his soul, while the plant's leaves droop under the weight of his melancholy. In the kitchen, the cook, now 3 goblets deep himself, decides to experiment with a new dish mid-feast, tossing leftover garum into a batch of honey cakes, claiming it's innovative. You catch him just in time, confiscating the cakes before they reach the guests, though the smell lingers, a reminder of the near disaster. A guest in the garden, inspired by the dove's earlier escape, decides to liberate the fish from the fountain, scooping them into his toga and releasing them into the pool, where they swim in confused circles, much to the amusement of his drunken companions. Dawn breaks with the subtlety of a dropped amphora, sunlight creeping across the marble floors and illuminating the carnage with a soft, unforgiving glow. Overturned goblets litter the triclinium, their contents staining the mosaics in abstract patterns of red and gold. A sandal is wedged in a fruit bowl, its laces tangled with grape stems, and a nobleman sleeps face down in a decorative urn, snoring softly, his toga hiked up to reveal a tattoo of a laurel wreath on his thigh. The perfume has faded into something resembling regret, the air now heavy with the scent of spilled wine, wilted roses, and the faint tang of garum from the cook's failed experiment. You step over a passed-out flute girl, her sandals still missing, her flute clutched to her chest like a child's toy, and assess the damage with a weary eye. A pile of olives has been arranged into a crude likeness of the emperor. You kick it under the table, not wanting to explain that to Piso, who would either laugh or accuse you of treason. The slaves begin the silent ritual of post-orgy cleanup, their movements slow and deliberate, bundling wine-stained linens, carting off half-eaten peacocks, and sweeping incense ashes into neat piles. You herd the doves from the pig performance into a corner, tossing them candied almonds they coo gratefully, having survived a night of chaos, their feathers ruffled but their spirits intact. The fish in the pool, relocated by the drunken guest, swim in lazy circles, their scales glinting in the morning light, a small reminder of the night's absurdity. A guest groans from under a table, his toga askew, a garland of wilted roses tangled in his hair. You nod in acknowledgement but offer no help. Everyone must face their own consequences, and you've done enough shepherding for one night. You make a list titled Debrief on a fresh wax tablet, its surface smooth under your stylus. Never serve throwable fruit. Do not allow live poetry battles near open flames. Keep the Venus statue in storage during future events. Seat Piso far from anyone with a garum jug. Ban the RSVP app forever, and speak to the cook about his innovative garum honey cakes. A philosopher, one of the few still awake, leaves a polite note scratched into a shard of pottery. Thank you. I've learned things I must never speak of. You smile faintly, tucking the shard into your tunic, a small token of the night's success. In the garden, the fountain still burbles, now littered with rose petals, a single sandal, and a few stray fish that didn't make it to the pool. The sky above Rome is a soft pink, the city waking to a new day as if nothing happened, its streets filling with the sounds of merchants, children, and the clatter of carts. You retire to your room, the small space feeling like a sanctuary after the chaos of the night. You kick off your sandals, the leather worn thin from a day of running between market and villa, and collapse onto your mat, the straw rustling beneath you, its familiar scent a comfort after the overwhelming opulence of the feast. There's no applause, no awards, just the quiet knowledge that no one saw the chaos because you absorbed it, a silent guardian of Rome's revelry. Tomorrow they'll tell stories of how perfect it was, how the wine flowed like a river, the dancers dazzled like goddesses, the night shimmered with decadence and scandal, a memory to be recounted in bathhouses and at future feasts. They'll speak of the peacock's grandeur, the dove's dramatic escape, the philosopher's fall into a senator's lap, and the poet who wooed a plant, their laughter echoing through the forum. You'll just sleep, the weight of Rome's revelry lifting as your eyes close, the city's heartbeat fading into a gentle hum, a lullaby for a planner who tamed chaos for one more night. The Tiber flows on, the 7 hills stand sentinel, and Rome dreams, its decadence a whispered legend in the morning light.